They killed my peach trees. 30 years I'd tended that orchard every spring, watching those pink blossoms burst against the Tennessee sunrise. My grandmother planted the first saplings in 1989, and I'd spent decades pruning, grafting, and hauling bushels to the farmer's market. Now, half my trees were shriveled, their leaves curling like burned paper, the air thick with a chemical stink that clung to my throat. The culprit? My HOA president, Deborah Langston, a woman who thought her gated community gave her divine right over my land. She'd hired a shady contractor to spray industrial herbicide on my property line, trying to force me to sell my orchard for her community expansion. What she didn't know was that her poison had seeped into the soil, feeding her neighborhood's irrigation system. Every sprinkler, every garden, every backyard kiddie pool in her precious subdivision was now laced with her own toxic mistake, and I was about to make sure she paid for it. My name's Ethan Caldwell, 48, a former mechanic turned small-scale farmer in Willowbrook, Tennessee. I'm the kind of guy who'd rather fix a tractor than argue with a lawyer. But when you mess with my family's land, I'll fight like a cornered bobcat. My 5-acre orchard sits on the edge of Willow Springs Estates, a shiny new subdivision of 600 homes where every lawn looks like it was mowed with a ruler. My property's been in the family since the 80s, back when this was all rolling hills and folks knew their neighbors. Every morning I walk the dirt path between my trees, the ground soft under my boots, the air heavy with the sweet scent of ripening peaches. Blue jays squawk from the branches, and the hum of cicadas fills the quiet. This place is my peace, my legacy. Then Deborah Langston rolled in. Picture her, 50, always in a crisp blazer, driving a pearl-white BMW she polishes more than her personality. She's the type who'd send a cease-and-desist letter over a crooked mailbox. Deborah became HOA president faster than you can say bylaws, and turned the neighborhood into her personal fiefdom. Her first target? My orchard. Apparently, my rustic trees were an eyesore, ruining her view of modern elegance. She offered $1.2 million to buy my land for a community pool and tennis courts. I told her she could shove her money where her HOA rulebook didn't fit. That's when the war started. It began with letters. Certified mail, embossed letterhead, the works. My orchard was non-compliant with neighborhood aesthetics, she claimed, despite my land predating her HOA by decades. She demanded I remove unsightly agricultural structures, my tool shed, and stop selling peaches at the road stand because it disrupted traffic flow. I called my cousin Lila, a property lawyer who dealt with HOA nonsense before. She laughed so hard she spilled her coffee. Ethan, your deed predates their entire subdivision. Their rules don't apply to you. She's blowing smoke. Knowledge nugget. Properties existing before an HOA's formation are generally exempt from its covenants unless explicitly agreed to. Your deed is your armor. When legal threats failed, Deborah got creative. Every morning her landscaping crew would accidentally block my driveway with their trucks, diesel fumes mixing with the orchard's sweet air. They'd crank leaf blowers at 6 a.m. right on my property line, the noise drowning out the birds. I'd find trash, plastic bottles, fast food wrappers, tossed into my orchard overnight. But I kept farming. Some things are worth fighting for, even against a suburban dictator with a vendetta and a platinum credit card. Then she crossed the line. I woke up one morning to a chemical stench so sharp it burned my eyes. Half my trees were wilting, their leaves yellow and brittle. The soil near the property line was damp with a strange, oily sheen. I grabbed a shovel, dug a sample, and sent it to a lab. The results hit like a punch. Industrial-grade herbicide, the kind used to clear highways, not backyards. It was killing my trees and seeping into the groundwater. I found a business card tucked under my truck's wiper. Green Tech Solutions, a landscaping company owned by Deborah's brother-in-law, Carl. The card smelled faintly of chemicals and arrogance. I was livid, standing among my dying trees, the air heavy with betrayal. But then I remembered something beautiful. My orchard sits on a slight hill, and the groundwater flows downhill, straight into Willow Springs' irrigation system. Every manicured lawn, every HOA-approved rose garden, Every sprinkler system was tied to the same aquifer feeding my land. Deborah hadn't just poisoned my orchard, she'd tainted her own neighborhood's water supply. And she was about to learn that karma tastes like herbicide. I called Lila, who connected me with Dr. Rachel Nguyen, an environmental scientist from the University of Tennessee. Rachel arrived with testing kits that looked like they belonged in a sci-fi movie. She spent hours sampling soil and water, her hands steady as she worked under the shade of my dying trees. Glyphosate-based herbicide, she said, her voice sharp with disgust. It's spreading through the aquifer. Within weeks, it'll hit every irrigation system in the subdivision. This is a public health disaster. Knowledge nugget. Herbicide contamination in groundwater can cause skin irritation, respiratory issues, and long-term health risks, triggering federal EPA investigations. Next, I recruited Jake Harper, a local journalist who'd exposed corrupt developers for a decade. He called it a story so juicy it could sell newspapers in a blackout. We dug into green tech solutions and found a gold mine. Carl's company had a history of cutting corners, including a 2019 fine for illegal chemical disposal. Better yet, Deborah had used HOA funds to pay Green Tech $4,000 for landscaping services the night my orchard was poisoned. Embezzlement, anyone. I spent a weekend at the county records office, the air thick with dust and bureaucracy. My grandmother's 1989 deed was a treasure map. It granted my family exclusive water rights to the aquifer feeding the entire subdivision. The developer who built Willow Springs never bought those rights, assuming the water came with the land. Knowledge nugget. Water rights are separate from land ownership and can be worth millions. For 12 years, 600 families had been using my water without permission. The math was staggering. $40 per household per month, times 600 homes, times 144 months, $3.4 million in back payments I could legally demand. But I didn't want to bankrupt my neighbors. I wanted Deborah to face the music. Lila drafted a legal strategy. Federal lawsuit for water rights theft, EPA complaint for contamination, state charges for illegal dumping, and a civil suit for property damage. We had soil tests, financial records, and a whistleblower from Green Tech who'd recorded Deborah ordering the herbicide job, claiming it was community property maintenance. Legal tip. Attempting to destroy evidence or bribe witnesses can turn a misdemeanor into felony obstruction of justice. The showdown came at the Willow Springs HOA meeting, packed with 400 angry residents. The community center smelled of stale coffee and panic. Parents were furious about dying gardens and kids' rashes from playing in sprinkler water. Deborah stood at the podium, her blazer pristine, blaming natural soil shifts for the irrigation issues. I walked to the mic holding my grandmother's deed. This document proves I own the water rights to your entire subdivision. For 12 years, you've used my water without payment. And Deborah Langston poisoned it with industrial herbicide, trying to force me out. Image 8. The sheriff's arrest of Deborah. The room erupted. Deborah screamed, "He's lying. He contaminated his own orchard." But Dr. Nguyen presented her findings. Herbicide levels 5 times above EPA safety limits, traced to my property line. Jake's article dropped that night. HOA president poisons neighborhood water in vendetta against farmer. CNN picked it up by morning. The sheriff served Deborah with an arrest warrant for environmental crimes and embezzlement as she shrieked about her connections. Handcuffs clicked. The crowd cheered. 6 months later, my orchard's recovering. Rachel's bioremediation plan, microbes and native plants, cleaned the soil faster than expected. The air smells of peaches again, not chemicals. Settlement funds, $200,000 from Deborah's assets and HOA insurance, created the Caldwell Orchard Trust, funding environmental education for local kids. Deborah got 2 years in prison, $50,000 in restitution, and a lifetime ban from HOA leadership. The subdivision's new board implemented transparency rules and opened my orchard for community picking days. Kids who'd never tasted a fresh peach now run through my trees laughing. Lessons learned: know your rights, document everything, fight tyrants with truth, not revenge. My orchard's thriving, and Deborah's watering jailhouse plants. Share your HOA horror stories below. Let's build a community that stops petty tyrants in their tracks.